Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what I want to do is I want to offer a bit of advice to one Aubrey Drake Graham. Now, if you've been following me and you follow this podcast, you know I hardly ever talk about current events. But, 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 on this episode, I will. And the reason being is because it's been the elephant in the room for the better part of the last few months. And I don't think, me being the OG that I am, I think it is incumbent upon me to give Drake some gems to take or not take. I know he watches my podcast. And full disclosure, I know you see this t-shirt that I'm wearing, which is the Good Kid Mad City's album cover, which is a phenomenal album, by the way. It's not to send any subliminal messages. I purposely picked out this shirt for this particular episode. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. Make sure that you download, subscribe, and tell a friend and share it with them and a few others. It's not that I'm a big Kendrick Lamar fan. I am. And I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of Drake's music. I understand and respect the fact that you guys have made him the hottest dude in the game for the last, 10 plus 15 years. And there's a level of respect that comes along with that because that's a reign to carry for a long time. But if you've been following this beef that he's had with Kendrick Lamar, you've probably seen everything play out. But I want to offer some game, if you will. Maybe not too much game. Shout out to Uncle Dolomite from the Too Much Game podcast. That's the homie right there. But I do want to offer some game to Drake. One thing that he can do is understand that if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And what I mean by that is there's someone on Drake's level who went through the same thing that Drake is going through, but on a different wavelength, but nonetheless the same things. And that's Jay-Z. Many years ago, Jay-Z found himself in a similar kerfuffle lyrically with the rapper Nas. Shout out to Nas. Shout out to Jay-Z. And when you think about hip hop beefs, right? What makes the Drake and Kendrick beef so interesting is that they are, as far as current rappers, in my opinion, they're 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. Because personally, I put J. Cole over Drake. But for the, object of this discussion, let's just say that Drake is number 2 behind Kendrick. But Drake is huge. He is a huge star. He is, someone who worked to get to this level. And we'll talk about that a little bit in this episode. But I think he should take notes from Jay-Z. Not that Jay-Z is going to give him any notes, but I'm going to give him the notes for him to have from Jay-Z. Because there's some things that Jay-Z did when he was beefing with Nas that Drake could learn from. And again, if you don't learn from your history, you will repeat it. But before I get into what I'm going to tell Drake, let's go back for those of you who may not have been outside when Jay-Z and Nas were beefing. The history of Jay-Z versus Nas. Nas and Jay-Z were really competing for the top spot, if you will, to be the quote unquote king of New York. And this was, in the days of hip hop in the early 2000s where there would be disses, but subliminal disses, or what we call subs. So they both subbed each other quite a bit, but never mentioned either by name. Uh, and I won't get into the whole back and forth, but there were subs thrown. Uh, Nas put out, I want to say it was, if I can't remember if it was a mixtape or if it were a full track. I don't think it was an album, but he put out a track dissing Jay-Z. It wasn't a full diss. I think he may have given Jay a half a bar. And I think what sparked it was he mentioned it was something at Memphis Bleak, and he said something about, "You want to ball till I fall, I help you with that." And he was talking about Memphis Bleak. Bleak fired back, and then Jay Jay stepped in for me, Memphis Bleak, and Jay-Z goes to Summer Jam and he does Takeover, or what would become Takeover, because Jay's album, and this is what, 2011? No, excuse me, 2001. I think it's 2001. The album hadn't come out yet. He does the first verse, and it's directed at Prodigy, the late Prodigy from Mobb Deep, rest in peace. And he says, he finishes it by saying, "Ask Nas, he don't want it with Hove," and cuts the song off, and everybody goes crazy. And that's when Nas came back. I think it was called H to the MO. And, he had a bar for Jay-Z. So Jay-Z fast forwards to September 11th when the album comes out, The Blueprint. And I think it's track 2 is The Takeover. And he gives you that same verse that he gave at Summer Jam in New York City for Prodigy. And then he ends it with "Ask Nas, he don't want it with Hove." And then he goes into verse 2, which is for Nas. And he bodies Nas on that track. And so, unbeknownst to us, this is it for Nas. It's over for Nas. Everybody thinks at this point, Jay-Z got Nas out of here. And it was interesting for me because I'm a fan of both. Huge fan of both at this particular time. I didn't want to see my two favorite rappers going at it. We had not fully healed from Tupac and Biggie, but this was different. And even Tupac and Biggie, sidebar real quick, even Tupac and Biggie were different because that one was personal. Like, it was really personal, especially once Pac said, what he said about Faith. Whether or not he was telling the truth or not remains to be seen. I don't think he was, but he definitely had enough ammo and enough guts to spit it on the track to at least try to put it out there. And of course, Biggie and Faith being estranged at the time didn't help. And so that set off everything. And then ultimately, Pac and Big both lose their lives. So we didn't want that to happen again. So Jay puts out Takeover and everything goes away. I mean, we literally don't hear from Nas for months. So keep in mind now, there's no internet. So there's nobody saying "Hey, Nas, you got to come back. You got to come back." No, myself included, along with everybody else, thought it was over for Nas. We didn't know how he's going to come back from this. The problem with messing with some people, particularly when you put them in a corner, you force them to fight back. And you could criticize Nas for the beats that he would, rap over. You could never criticize him as an MC because he's an elite MC, always has been. But, the knock on Nas was he picked bad beats. Nas comes back with Ether and destroys Jay-Z. He destroys Jay-Z to the point where Jay-Z runs to the studio and records a song called Super Ugly. And in Super Ugly, he talks about the fact that he slept with Nas's baby mama, blah, 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 blah. And then it's left to us to decide. Takeover, Super Ugly versus Ether. It wasn't even close. Ether obliterated Jay-Z. Now, let me say this and be clear. There are people that I call the Hovengers. The Hovengers, even to this day, don't think that Jay-Z lost that battle. Let me let you in on a little secret. he did. And I'll be the first to admit, I had a hard time letting go of the fact that I thought Jay won it first. He didn't win. You go listen to Takeover and you go listen to Ether, they're not the same. One, Jay spent half of the song for Takeover going at Mobb Deep. He spent the other half going at Nas. Ether was a diss record for one person. He didn't care who else heard that song. He wanted Jay to hear it. And he went right at Jay-Z and tore him apart. And so he knocks Jay-Z. And at this time, keep in mind, Jay-Z is the biggest star in rap, one of the biggest stars in the world. And he knocks Jay-Z off his pedestal, KOs him. And this is Nas, but this is what Nas is capable of. And this is the Nas that we wanted to see. And he subsequently delivered an incredible album on Stillmatic. And I personally think that Jay-Z's beef with Nas helped get Nas back in the game as far as him being an elite MC and rapping over better beats and doing what he was supposed to do and being Nas. And you've seen Nas continue in that ascension, in my opinion, since that beef. So that's the history of Jay-Z versus Nas. So let's fast forward, but back up just a little bit and talk about the history of Drake versus Kendrick. These guys, from what I can tell, were contemporaries. I can't say that they were friends, but they worked together before. They seem to be cool. I don't know if they're the type that would go have a beer together, but they seem, at least from the outside looking in, they seem to be cool. Now, Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole have different relationships. I think Drake and J. Cole are very close. I think Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole are cool, very cordial. They talked about maybe doing music together. And then things weren't cool. So let me give you a brief timeline. On March 22nd, a song by Future, Metro Boomin, with a guest verse from Kendrick Lamar called Like That drops on March 22nd, 2024. And of course, in the song, Kendrick Lamar claims, fuck the big three, it's just big me. And he was talking about, they had referenced the fact that they were the big three, Kendrick, Cole, and Drake. Kendrick said, nah, I'm not. And he compared Drake to Prince and him to Michael Jackson. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, he compared him and he said Prince outlived. He called himself Prince and compared Drake to Michael Jackson. He said Prince outlived Michael Jackson. Now, subsequently, J. Cole releases a song dissing Kendrick Lamar. And the song is out less than 48 hours before J. Cole issues a public apology to Kendrick Lamar. He said he had not slept and that he was embarrassed by the song. He didn't mean it. And he said, hey, if you want to diss me, take your best shot. I'm not, this ain't what I'm going to do. This ain't what I'm about. Drake didn't take the same route. On April 13th, 2024, Drake releases Push-Ups. So he comes right back at Kendrick Lamar. And honestly, again, I'm not a Drake fan, but I like this song. This was a good comeback. He hit him with a lyric like, he said, you ain't no big three. SZA got you wiped down. Travis got you wiped down. Savage got you wiped down. Like your label, boy, you in a scope right now. You're going to feel the aftermath of what I write down. That's a bar. That's a bar. You gotta get the language in there because of what he said. He said Interscope, which is Interscope, aftermath, where Kendrick Lamar is. Let me continue. And you're gonna feel the aftermath of what I write down. I'm at the top of the mountain, so you tight right now. You just have to talk with your ass. I had to hike down. Big difference between Mike and Mike now. And he goes on to diss him about, him being on records with pop stars like Maroon 5 and Taylor Swift. And then he also threw a stray at Rick Ross. and Rick Ross jumped into it. And, Rick Ross released a song about Drake's abs and him getting a BBL. But that's another story for another day. Drake comes back. So the Push-Ups was released April 13th. Drake comes back on April 19th with the Tailor-Made Freestyle. Now, this is a song that contains AI-generated voices of Tupac and Snoop. Tupac's estate eventually told them to take it down, a cease and desist. So it was taking off all streaming platforms. And while from what I remember about the song, it was okay. Using AI voices was whack. I didn't like it at all. I thought Drake was kind of reaching. I think he should have, done a better job. But that's, again, we're not here to critique the songs. I'm just taking you through the history. Kendrick Lamar comes back on April 30th and releases Euphoria. Euphoria is about 6 minutes long, and he scorches Drake. He goes in on Drake on everything. I'm not going to read it. Y'all heard the song. Go listen to it if you haven't. Then May 3rd, Kendrick Lamar comes back with 616 in LA, making fun of Drake's penchant for using time and locations in songs. This song's come just days after he had dropped Euphoria. And that was his attempt to go back to back. And in that particular song, he actually makes a point. He says, "Have you ever thought that OVO was working for me? Fake bully? I hate bullies. You must be a terrible person. Everybody inside your team is whispering you deserve it." Serious allegations here. Then we move on. May 3rd, Drake comes back with Family Matters, an 8-minute track where he talks about Kendrick Lamar's fiance, Whitney Alford, alleging infidelity. He also alleged that he beat up his old lady. He said, "I'm on some Bobby shit. I want to know what Whitney need." And then he said, "When you put your hands on your girls, is it self-defense because she's bigger than you?" Another jab at Kendrick's height, which I thought was funny. But, this was a very good song. And I think it showed that Drake was coming back, but the song was short-lived because about 40 minutes later, Kendrick releases Meet the Grams on May 4th. He didn't give Drake any time for that song to sit. Just as people were listening to it, he comes back and Kendrick addresses the entire Graham family, from Drake's mom to his dad to Drake's son Adonis. And he also alleges that Drake has a secret child, which is something that we've heard before. Goes in on him. Not even the next day. Later that day, May 4th, Kendrick drops Not Like Us. Meet the Grams was brutal, but not like this. He makes very damning accusations that Drake is a pedophile, and he also makes a bop, which is something that Kendrick Lamar is not known for. And this song takes off and spreads like wildfire, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Drake follows up on May 5th, which is the next day, with The Heart Part 6. Drake basically says on this song is that, the allegations of a secret child, you got to find it. You got to show that to me. We put that out there just so you could see, so you could run with it. He pretty much waves the white flag. I think by this time we know that it's over, right? But it ain't over. Kendrick Lamar has a pop out on Juneteenth, at the Fabulous Forum in Inglewood, California. Everybody's there. Kendrick Lamar's set starts off with Euphoria. And he actually changed the lyric in Euphoria. He said, "Give me Tupac's ring back and I might give you a little respect." He changed that part of one of the verses. But the pop out was crazy. And of course, at the pop out, he performed Not Like Us. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, but 5 times. And then they played it when they left the arena. So the song got played 6 times. And of course, there were gangbangers from every set in damn near LA. uh, basketball players, any and everybody was on that stage, and the pop out was crazy. I watched it live. It's one of the best things I've seen all year. And we were all talking about it. But Kendrick wasn't done. July 4th, Independence Day in this country. He drops the Not Like Us video. The video features Dave Free, and Drake had alleged in one of the songs that Dave Free, Kendrick's homeboy, was the father of one of Kendrick's kids. Not true. Well, the thing about diss records is there's not a lot of truth in the stuff that gets said. I mean, I think that's one of the things that some of the fans got twisted. Like, most of the stuff that's said in a diss record isn't true. It's just how you go along with it and how clever they make it or how believable they make it. So there's a lot of different Easter eggs and hidden messages in that particular video. But the closeout part of the video is Kendrick's fiance and children dancing, crip walking, sea walking, whatever you want to call it, or maybe blood walking. I don't know. To Not Like Us at the end of the video. Perfect. This song is everywhere. And again, Drake, there's nothing Drake can do. Not Like Us is a song that becomes a smash that actually is calling Drake a pedophile. It's bad. So that's the history of Kendrick versus Drake. So now let's go back to the subject at hand. What note should Drake take from Jay-Z? First note, understand that you underestimated your opponent. I think that's very key. Jay-Z underestimated Nas. Jay-Z knows or knew that Nas was an incredible MC. I don't think that goes without saying. I don't think anybody could have gone into that Jay-Z versus Nas battle and said that Nas wasn't an elite MC. But Jay-Z, sitting on the horse that he sat on, underestimated Nas. He underestimated that he, in creating Takeover, he pushed Nas into a corner. And he caused and made Nas fight back. And when you push people into corners, you don't know how they're going to respond. That's some game for you, because in life, when you push people into corners, you don't know how they're going to respond. Some people will go into a corner and cry and they will shrivel up. Others will emerge from that corner and bust you in your damn mouth. And this is what happened. So Drake can take a page from Jay-Z in that aspect, because Drake was in between the timeline that I gave you. He was kind of poking at Kendrick, on social media, making fun and jokes and stuff. And I really think that he didn't think that Kendrick Lamar was going to come back when he made After Push-Ups. I think Drake thought that was it. And I think what he underestimated was that this guy is calculated. Like, Kendrick Lamar has strategically calculated all of this. And I was telling the homie Dig Game, shout out to Dig Game, straight out of Low Cash Podcast. I was on his podcast talking about it. I think Drake, in the Family Matters song, he shot a video for it, and they had the van from or at least a make-believe van from the album cover from Good Kid, Mad City. And so he's doing all of these things, and Kendrick somehow gets the intel or whatever. I don't know how he gets this information, but he has this information. And Kendrick, he's plotting and planning, and he's making songs while all of this stuff is going on. While Drake is making social media memes, Kendrick is preparing himself for this battle. And Drake underestimated him. And I think Jay-Z did the same thing. So that's something that he could definitely learn. Don't underestimate your opponent. Understand that they're just as capable as you are of, throwing a haymaker. Point 2. Understand that you lost, but don't admit it publicly. This is very interesting. And I don't want you to lose this. To my knowledge, and I've seen a lot of interviews, Jay-Z has never admitted publicly that he lost to Nas. If you're familiar, Jay-Z and Nas both sat down with Sway from Sway in the Morning and Touré, the journalist, the hip hop journalist Touré. And both had, talked about their sides and where they were coming from and why they got, because at this point they were coming back together. They had already performed and showed up at I can't remember the name of the concert, but they showed up together at a concert and they stood on stage and people went crazy because we'd never seen Jay-Z and Nas. And this was at the end of the beef. And then they come and they do these interviews. But Jay-Z has never admitted publicly that he lost that battle. Again, the whole Vengers are going to tell you that Jay-Z didn't lose that battle. But all of us know Jay-Z lost that damn battle. So that's something that Drake can take from Jay-Z. Jay-Z has been able to maneuver and not ever publicly admit that he lost. And if I'm not mistaken, in the interview, they were asked that, and I think they both said that they won. Now, Nas knows he won. So he ain't got nothing to be ashamed of. Jay, you know damn well you didn't win that battle. Because if you felt like you won, then you would have never recorded Super Ugly. And you admitted yourself that your mother told you, hey man, that's too much. Cut it out. Grow up. He by his own admission, his mom said, nah, this you can't do this. You're not about to do this. I ain't raised you to do this. And so when your mama tell you out of pocket, you really out of pocket, right? So I think that's a thing that Drake can do. You can be candid about it. You can have interviews about it, but you don't have to ever publicly admit that you lost. Jay found a way. I think Drake can too. Next thing, Drake, I think one thing you should do is be quiet. If you're quiet, you allow time to happen. And when time happens, people move on. I'll be honest, at the time of this recording, if Drake and Kendrick drop 2 more diss records, I don't know that people will be as invested in those songs as they were a couple of months ago. I just don't. Because at this point, other than the two of them getting in a ring and fighting, which I don't think that that is, because I don't know that they have that much disdain for each other. Pac and Biggie, there was probably, especially after what Pac alleged that he did with Faith, you could see Pac and Biggie fighting. Nas and Jay, they were never going to fight. They were never going to shoot at each other, but their camps could have. One other beef that I know that happened in hip hop was, 50 Cent and Ja Rule. 50 Cent and Ja Rule genuinely don't like each other. And they have a history all the way back to some street shit. And they've been in a physical fist fight before. So those two it's on site, like if they see each other. But they may be the only two in hip hop that I think literally would come to blows if they came face to face with each other. Fortunately, they haven't all these years, and they probably won't. But I think the thing that I would tell Drake right now is just be quiet. Time will allow this to pass. One thing we do know about time is that after a while, people don't care as much. And when they're not caring, when you're not in their face about it, they're not worried about it. And then so that can allow Drake to come out and make, another song or another album and, not even mention it and just keep going. But if you're on social media and you're still making memes and stuff about Kendrick, you don't want to poke that man again, because at this point, there's no telling what he knows or what he will say about you. I don't know at this point. I don't know what he knows. I just know he's very calculated. And I don't think that there's been enough in this beef that it would kill Drake's career, because I don't think that's possible at this point. Not right now. Now, if these allegations to him being a pedophile come out, if there's some seriousness to that, that could kill his career. But then again, maybe not. Some of y'all still listen to R. Kelly. And he's a pedophile. So what? Let's move on. The next thing that he can do where he can learn from Jay-Z is, and this is going to be difficult, if he could do what Jay-Z did with Nas. Jay-Z and Nas came to some type of agreement. And I don't know this as fact, but I just know this because it hasn't happened. But after they squashed their beef, they stopped performing those diss records. So if you go to a Nas concert, you won't hear Ether. If you go to a Jay-Z concert, you won't hear Takeover. I'm assuming that they agreed on that, and that's where they are. Here's the problem with that. That's easier said than done. You may be able to get Kendrick from performing Euphoria. He may agree not to perform 616 in LA. He may agree to never perform Meet the Grams. But Not Like Us, I don't know. Because that song is a bop. It's a banger. And Kendrick Lamar, here's where he flipped the script. Not Like Us is more of a song that we would have expected from Drake, not from Kendrick. That's where he got him. And so this song has gained so much momentum. And even when you think the momentum is dying down, it comes back up. He releases a video. Millions of people have seen this video. And guess what? At the time of this recording, school's about to start. Guess what? Every high school and college band will be playing this fall. Not Like Us. It's an anthem. And you really have people as young as 5 years old saying, A minor. The world is singing along, calling you a pedophile. I would want anybody to not perform that song. And there's no way that Drake can get away from this song because we hear it every single day. I was watching the NBA playoffs and they were going into commercial playing that song. There are DJs that are playing it constantly. And what happens is when the DJ plays it, the club gets turned up. And what happens? Everybody pulls out their cell phone and they're recording themselves. And it's a thing. You can't stop DJs from playing it, but nobody played Takeover in the club. Nobody played Ether in the club. Nobody played No Vaseline in the club. Hit 'em up, yeah, it got some spins, but it wasn't a bop like this. So regardless of whether or not you like Not Like Us or not, the song isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So my advice, where he could take a page from Jay-Z, get Kendrick Lamar to agree to not do the song ever again. I don't know if that's going to happen. That's a tough ask because, again, it's easy to ask Nas not to perform Ether. It's easy to ask Jay not to perform Takeover. To ask K-Dot not to perform Not Like Us, I don't know. And the last thing that I'll say that he could, where Drake could take notes from Jay-Z, is to piece it up. Just piece it up. Maybe not now. Maybe not a year from now. Maybe 5, 7 years from now. Piece it up. Piece it up. Go have a sit down with, I don't know, Charlemagne or somebody, and just piece it up. And just agree to move on and sit. Maybe you can sit back and laugh and have a good time and be cool. Maybe, just maybe even record something together. And, that way show the world that, it was a moment, it was a time, but you move on. And it's capable. It's happened. I mean, Ice Cube tore up NWA, literally and figuratively. And Ice Cube and Dre are cool to this day. So is MC Ren and Yella. It happens. I mean, Jay and Nas pieced it up. They did a couple of songs together. Nas actually partnered with Jay-Z and, came over to Def Jam when Jay-Z was the um, president. Now, key word, partnered. He didn't sign to Def Jam. He partnered with Def Jam. There's a difference. So even in saying that, it can happen. Biggie and Tupac never got a chance to piece it up. I'm hopeful that that's something that can happen. I don't know how likely it is, but words hurt, feelings get hurt, pride gets hurt. But after a while, it's just words. Nobody got punched, nobody got shot, nobody got beat down. At least nobody of relevance. I think Rick Ross got punched, but that was something. I'm talking about these two guys. I ain't talking about nobody else. But it can happen. Piece it up 5 to 7 years from now. Like I said, maybe you work together, maybe you do an interview, or maybe you join up and y'all do a concert together. Who knows? Get money together. It's possible. In conclusion, I think Drake really should take some notes from Jay-Z. I think Jay-Z has laid the blueprint, no pun intended, for this. But I think it's very important to do that and move on. Because ultimately Drake lost again because he lost to Pusha T. Now, you could say what you want. You could say, well, Pusha, hit below the belt. But I mean, this was dirty. This was nasty. I mean, children are involved. Women are involved. And I mean, that wasn't supposed to be a part of hip hop beefs. But here's the thing. Kendrick said in the song, this is a friendly fade. You can keep it that way. But, when you mention woman's name, all bets are off. Drake did the same thing with Pusha T. He mentioned his fiance. And the next thing you know, Pusha T finds out about a son that none of us knew about. It happens. But both guys can move on from this. I don't necessarily know that they're going to be 50 years old beefing about, what was said on Wax 20 years ago. Maybe, maybe not. But again, I think Jay-Z has laid the blueprint for Drake to follow. This is a blueprint that he definitely should follow because there's a lesson learned here. Now, whether or not you choose to listen, that's something totally different. But like I said earlier, if you don't learn from your history, you're definitely doomed to repeat it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Thursday, every Sunday at midnight. You can find the podcast on any platform, any streaming platform is where you can find the podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, that's where the 12 Kyle podcast is. If you're on YouTube, thank you for watching on YouTube. First and foremost, be sure to subscribe. The great thing about our YouTube channel is that we not only offer the video, but we also offer audio as well. And share it with your friends and leave comments. I'll take comments. Love comments. And I do respond back. If you're on social media, follow me on social media at 12Kyle, at 12Kyle Podcast on Twitter X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, what else? TikTok. We have a TikTok page on TikTok at 12Kyle Podcast. If you feel so inclined, you want to throw some money our way, we'll take it. If you look in the description box, there's a link for merch. We got 12 Kyle Podcast t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, posters, you name it, for a very low price. You can also contribute to the podcast financially. Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. Again, that's going to do it for me. I am your boy 12 Kyle, and this has been another edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's.